Welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Phil Wesley, the Mile High Mouth. And today we're going to talk about Touch Generations. What is Touch Generations? Well, in 2006, the Nintendo DS was a failing system. It was terrible. Sales were abysmal. Nintendo was trying their darndest to make some sort of money off of the Nintendo DS. They launched it. It came with a demo for Metroid Prime Hunters, which had been, if I remember correctly, delayed. People just weren't really feeling the Nintendo DS. They weren't touching it. Nobody wanted the Nintendo DS. I know, in hindsight, you look at that and you go, What do you mean? That was one of the best-selling systems ever. What do you mean nobody wanted it? Well, nobody wanted it. The Nintendo DS was a clunky system, and people just thought the touch gimmick was stupid. None of the games really took advantage of it in a way that people thought was compelling. And it was just overall a failure. A complete failure of marketing. Just completely terrible. Nobody liked it. So Nintendo had a way, or rather thought of a way, to make it popular. They released the Nintendo DS Lite, a slimmer, more marketable, and better looking system, and they launched something called Touch Generations. It was launched in Japan in 2005, and then launched in the United States in 2006, and in Europe in 2006. Now, what were the Touch Generation titles? Well, the first Touch Generations title to actually be released would be, well, let's see what we have here. We have a bunch of stuff that was in the Touch Generation series. The first ones with the Touch Generation branding in the United States were games like Magnetica. But the Touch Generation series essentially started in the United States with Brain Age. We got Brain Age. Brain Age got a sequel, Brain Age 2. There was a version of that put out for kids called Big Brain Academy. There were other puzzle games in this series like Planet Puzzle League, Magnetica that we mentioned before, Tetris DS, Mystery Case Files Millionaire, Clubhouse Games, which has 42 different games in one, Flash Focus, Vision Training in minutes a day, Personal Trainer Walking, which also came with two pedometer devices that you could use with the game, Master of Illusion, which came with a little card deck. Essentially, it's the same type of card deck that you would get anywhere. It's actually a standard-sized game deck, and you could use anything for it. For example, it works with any card deck, so I could have, say, some cards from a casino. They'll work just fine. Master of Illusion. You had stuff like Personal Trainer Math, which this one kind of focuses around the core math idea. Core math things where you do blocks of math. Brain Age and Brain Age 2 were kind of based on the Stroop test. There were titles like Picross DS, True Swing Golf, Sudoku Gridmaster, Crosswords, Picross 3D, Elite Beat Agents, "100 Classic Books", Rhythm Heaven, Personal Trainer Cooking. I kind of like that one a lot. Art Academy, Hotel Dusk, Room 215, and then some kind of obscure ones like Electroplankton, which you could only order from Nintendo, in the United States. And then a series of titles referred to as Nintendogs. The biggest ones with this were Nintendogs, Lab and Friend. Nintendogs and Brain Age really brought the Nintendo DS to life. They really sold the Nintendo DS. While these types of games did in fact spawn millions of pets and cats and other weird knockoff titles, including the whole My Coach series, which we'll go into at some point. But you had Nintendogs. Nintendogs was interesting in that it was released initially in 3 different versions, and those were Nintendogs Chihuahua and Friends, Nintendogs Lab and Friends, and Nintendogs Dachshund and Friends. The difference between these 3 games, can you guess? They're similar to Pokemon in that there are stuff in the red version that's not in the blue version or the green version, and stuff in the green version that's not in the blue or the red version, and continuing so forth and on. And you can unlock everything by having dogs from this version visit these versions to unlock them in that version. You're not trading pets around. Now, there was eventually a special edition that came out later on called Nintendogs Dalmatian and Friends, which had more pet options right off from the go. And then Nintendogs Best Friends Edition, which came with a little gold Nintendo DS with a paw print on it. So I'm trying to remember. There was one version that had gold, and I think there was a pink version as well with a little paw print on it. But yeah, the Best Friends Edition. So, this is the entire Touch Generation series for the Nintendo DS. Now, they also released a couple of these for the Wii under the Touch Generations label. When the Touch Generations label was announced, and Nintendo announced some of the games like Magnetica or Brain Age that would be part of it, there was actually a bit of a backlash in the American media. I remember reading on Gaming Age forums and on places like Nintendojo or IGN or Joystick or Kotaku, where they were saying that Nintendo has betrayed gamers by releasing the Touch Generation series of games. The joke's on all these people, though, because the Touch Generation series of games put more Nintendo DS units in the hands of players than any other series. Many of these, like for example the Nintendogs series, has sold over 22 million worldwide, with Brain Age has sold over 17 million copies worldwide. And many of these inspired tons of neat sequels, like for example the European-only Last Window, which is a sequel to Hotel Dusk. Elite Bee Agents is a localization of Owinden, a specialized localization. And then America's Test Kitchen is a sequel to Let's Get Cooking, which has more recipes. Games like Tetris DS got a sequel in Tetris Access. Brain Age got Concentration Training. The Nintendo 3DS launched with Nintendogs plus Cats, which of course had 3 different versions again. You had Toy Poodles and Boxers and Labs and all that other jazz. The Art Academy series has gotten several sequels. There's Art Academy, there's Pokemon Art Academy, and coming up soon there's Disney Art Academy. The Picross series of games inspired Picross E, which are all digital titles available for the Nintendo 3DS. Crosswords DS inspired Crosswords Plus, which had even more stuff added to it. Many of these games have gone on to be other things. We've all seen Sudoku games for that. True Swing Golf, some aspects of this ended up in Mario Golf games. Rhythm Heaven, we're getting a new Rhythm Heaven game in the United States later this year for the Nintendo 3DS. A lot of these games, well, they were bashed by the media, by the mainstream video game media at the time, went on to sell millions of copies and inspire several beloved franchises. Personally, I would love to see a new version of Electroplankton on the Nintendo 3DS. We would all love to see more Elite Beat agents. I'm one of those people who, I really liked 100 classic books. I would love to buy that digitally. Games like Clubhouse Games or Sudoku Gridmaster, these are things that deserve more play. Everyone's played Nano Loop or so. Most people have played Nano Loop. That's what Magnetica is. There's a weird Tokyo something. It's like Tokyo something or other for the Nintendo DS where you're throwing people instead of a ball. It's based on Magnetica. It's just an interesting series. The Touch Generations logo and branding was ended in I think around like 2010 or so. They stopped using the branding, and that's why a lot of later games and sequels to it don't have the branding. No, sorry, it's I think it's like I think it's about 2010 or so. When the Nintendo 3DS launched was right about when they discontinued the branding for Touch Generations. This was because of criticism about the branding, and just generally they didn't need it anymore. They needed the Touch Generations branding to sell the Nintendo DS and to get people onto the Wii. And when they didn't need it anymore, they just kind of left the branding to die. Thankfully, though, like I said and mentioned, they didn't leave many of the franchises to die. And that's pretty good. Let's see. Oh my goodness, there's just a big old line of Nintendogs. You know, Nintendogs, the first one got a 40 in Famitsu, meaning it got a perfect score in Famitsu, which very few games, well, back in that time, actually got. Oh, this right here is just a French version of where's that? Oh, Personal Trainer Cooking. This is a French version of Personal Trainer Cooking. Most all these games will work on any system too. In fact, except for like the 3DS titles, all of these titles are region free. So you can get them you can practically buy into any of these if you're overseas or whatnot. I would actually recommend people seek out many of the Touch Generation series of games. The Picross and Picross 3D are insanely great. They're really good fun. Planet Puzzle League is awesome. Sudoku Gridmaster is a good game for that. What's interesting about some of these, like for example, Brain Age and Brain Age 2 and Hotel Dusk, you hold your 3DS sideways. They all work on any version of the system, and they're all, well, except for maybe Master of Illusion, worth checking out and worth your time. And they're all region free, which is something I'd like to see Nintendo get back to doing. But yeah, they're worth it. This is the Touch Generation series of titles. It came, it saw, it conquered, and then it left us. Well, actually, this is the Nintendo Touch Generations series of games. But yeah, did you buy any of these games? Did other people buy any of these games for you? Were some of these your first titles? How many of you grew up with Nintendogs? What did you name your Nintendogs? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you can keep watching other videos that we have, because we're going to be covering more franchises and more unusual Nintendo collector stuff for the DS and the Game Boy Color, and other systems. And until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.